Stakeholders and professionals in the land and surveying industry at the just concluded 19th edition of the Adekunle Kukoyi Memorial Lecture have emphasized the critical role of infrastructure in economic development. The event, organized by the National Institution of Surveyors, NIS, Lagos branch, saw conversations center on the need for government to address infrastructure challenges in the country and change the narrative of Nigeria's economic growth, especially in the face of the naira's depreciation against the dollar. The role of surveyors as pivotal players in economic growth and development indeed cannot be overemphasized, as they identify potential industrial sites, foster job creation, provide accurate land measurements, and as well contribute to the agriculture sector by determining farm boundaries. The Adekunle Kukoyi Memorial Lecture, 7 as a platform for discussing national issues and proffering solutions, addressed the theme "Going Somewhere from Everywhere," the search for sustainable economic development in Nigeria.
You can see that even those who are jackpying, if I would use that term, will tell you that it's not really rosy on the other side. And we have a number of people who are bringing in their experience from abroad, coming back. I think our economy can only benefit. We are going down, and I think we are almost at rock bottom. So the only thing now is bounce back up, because most of our equipment are made out of the country. Colleagues complained 2 weeks ago. Someone said he bought the dollar for about 1.2, and yesterday, someone was complaining when I said, 1 point. He said, no, it's actually about 1.4 now. So we're hoping next week or in another 2 weeks, it won't be 1.6. But we are still optimistic that the government, they're saying things. So we're hoping that these are the issues that should be on the front burner, because it affects you and I, it affects my pockets. Lots of colleagues are paying school fees abroad, and it's killing. We're hoping that they're responsive and things will change soon.
The lecture featured insights from the guest speaker, Professor Oludiran Akinleye, a professor of economics from the University of Lagos, who emphasized the necessity for government to establish sustainable development goals to propel the nation forward in its pursuit of growth. This, he emphasized, is imperative for Nigeria to advance in its quest for inclusive growth, navigate economic uncertainties, and build a resilient foundation for the future.
The principal means for rating economic performance is growth in GDP. As long as there's growth in GDP, then the economy is growing. So that you now cherry pick some data against others does still not remove from the greater picture. So yes, some indices will be low, others will be high, but generally, broadly speaking, the economy is growing. The economy includes all of us in Nigeria. Okay? Somebody is losing a job, another person is getting a job. For the person losing the job, it's a bad economy. For the person getting the same job, it's a good economy. So you cannot use individual statistics to explain the totality. What's important is there's positive GDP growth at the moment. So how we then deal with the specific negatives, it's up to policymakers, but broadly speaking, there's economic growth.
What the lecturer was trying to bring out is actually, lay bare all the problems we have in the country. It's so easy to blame government. Yes, government, they are the ones in charge, and they are the ones everybody looks up to. But I think the lecturer here today has laid bare all the problems we face. The issue of our GDP and then GDP ratio to our population, and he has shown comparisons. South Africa, Egypt, and then he took Qatar from outside. So I think we will be kind of moderate in our criticism of government. Yes, like he said, he praised government for always coming up with good initiatives. But he says when it comes to implementation, maybe they could be better ways of implementing it. And I think for us citizens too.
The prevailing economic climate, including the Naira's decline against the dollar, heightened the urgency of addressing issues related to sustainable development.
Demand and supply came up in the lecture when it had to do with the value of the dollar to the Naira. And I explained that dollar had remained low because it was kept artificially so, with the government using the reserves to prop up the value of the Naira relative to the dollar. Now that the dollar is free floating, or the Naira is free floating, obviously demand and supply will play an increasing role. So we have one of two options. Number one, how do we curb the demand for imported items and relax the demand for the dollar, which means we have to go for homegrown solutions, or alternatively, we have the government come back to propping up the dollar, which according to the government, they do not even have the dollars to prop up the Naira relative to the dollar. So it's a dilemma that is better imagined.
The role of quality leadership was also highlighted as key to growth in any economy, with speakers reflecting on the life of the late surveyor Adekunle Kukoyi.
Surveyor Kukoyi remains an icon for many of us in the surveying community, and his footprints in public and private life are benchmarks for many of us. He was president of the Nigerian Surveyors from 1973 to 1978. Some of us will remember the All African Games 1973. He was one of those who sat with the then president, the then head of state, General Gowon. We also remember him as a very active Rotary member.
Pa Kukoyi died in 2002 February, and this celebration today is the 19th. The next one of next year will be the 20th of our celebration for his annual lecture. He's a wonderful president, past president, and he's an Egma. He's like an icon of every aspect of life in Nigeria. He was a philanthropist, he was a surveyor par excellence, he was a leader par excellence. And like I said in my speech in the hall, he's one past president of the institution who has mentored a lot of us to be surveyors.
I think it's very commendable, and maybe against the grain of what I know, of what we believe about Nigeria. This is a man who died more than 20 years ago, and his professional colleagues are still honoring him. I mean, that is the definition of greatness. And in a nation where we seek heroes, we live with heroes every day, and Surveyor Kukoyi is an example. Nobody has come out to say, oh, in his 20 years, let's forget about him. And with the way this is going, this lecture could practically exist in perpetuity. So we have the Awolowos, we have the Azikiwes, we have the Gandhis and co. The surveyor profession is very fortunate to have Surveyor Kukoyi as an example for younger people, and I commend him, I commend his life, I commend his family, and I commend the institution of surveyors for honoring his memory. It's good that, a good name has far outlived the lifetime of the man. It's a beautiful thing to behold.
You couldn't predict him. He was somebody who loved everything and everybody, but he was a very strict person. Friendly, organized, blunt to a fault, and definitely someone whose character touched so many lives. My father was somebody who would at all times say something which I hold on to. Young men think old men are fools, but we, the young men, know you young one are the fools. So I've grown now to see everything he had spoken about in my young years have come to pass. He's a dedicated Nigerian. He was somebody who was totally into staying in the country. I don't know if he's alive now. He would want to hold on to that. He didn't like you to japa. He wanted you to be a totally patriotic person. I live in England, unfortunately, in the last 30 plus years. If he was here, probably he would say, you shouldn't have gone. Fantastic husband, an educationist to the core. He expects you to be very, very good in what you do, regardless of your area. So you didn't have to be a university graduate if you couldn't. My father would always want you to aspire in all you do. So even if you're a plumber, get a qualification as a plumber, but excel in that and always look beyond yourself. So he's a Rotarian, and he held on to the rules of Rotary, which is, would it be beneficial to others? Would you look beyond yourself? And would you always remember that there's somebody else worse off than you? So always think positive about every part of your life. I have been very impressed at the way the surveyors have kept this legacy of my father, and I actually flew in a few days ago for this, and I've made it a point of duty to always come.
The event concluded with a collective call for collaborative efforts between the government and stakeholders to propel the nation towards a path of enduring economic prosperity.